And we're back with another episode of What the
Chill
Podcast.
All right,
Guys,
it's been a while, bro.
it has, man. Last week we didn't get to do our podcast because of the hurricane and different family things. I will say, Ed, I don't know how many people checked with you, but when I post that we had a family emergency, man, I had 5, 6, 7 people, reaching out. So they were definitely praying for you. I let them know, it was in regards to your family, nothing specific. But that's kind of how it started. And then the hurricane and man, I'll admit, man, my feelings are a little hurt, man. This is the first podcast where you're not in Florida, man.
Oh man, I'm sorry I don't feel the same way. Like I love it, but I man, this past week has been a whirlwind for me and my family. The braving the cold, and now the temperature's dropping, trying to get all my animals situated for brumation and taken care of. And now I gotta, spend all the time, for the firewood and the pole barn and, 3 kids and, and starting my new job this week at the Toledo Zoo and, all that good stuff. It's all good stuff, man. But it's, it was to be expected with this whole move. So, So yeah, man. But I couldn't be more excited to actually be able to, like I said earlier, went to go to the Bass Pro Shop with the little one and got to get all new hats and gloves and this and that. And I'm like, man, I feel like a little kid again on Christmas, and haven't been able to experience flurries like this morning, in 8 years. So, right before hunting season and everything else. And yeah, it's all good stuff. So I'm glad
while you're on the topic of snow flurries, bro, I have to admit, I've never seen snow in real life.
Well, I mean, you got plenty of chances now, man. I'm up here. You're more than welcome.
Yeah. No, I'm excited, man. My wife and I have always talked about, going up north and traveling. And it's funny. I'm going to use this to segue into our guest. I always wanted to move to Texas, but obviously my passion for terrapins has caused me not to want to move to Texas now. But it's actually been a place I actually wanted to go to Texas A&M for grad school, man. I don't know why, but that's where I wanted to go. I had my dreams set there. Didn't end up happening. I'm a double gator. But I think it'll be interesting to get some Texas perspective tonight. For the viewers that don't know, we have a 2-week special where we're talking to the amazing individuals running Texas Turtles. And tonight, we're going to go ahead and get started with our guest, Mr. Carl Franklin. And so we were already getting into some good, juicy material before we even started. I had to, let's save that. So let's go ahead and add to the show. Hey, it was good content, though, man. And I think the viewers need to hear it. So let's go ahead and add them to the stream.
Yeah.
Carl, man.
Howdy.
Hey there,
man. How you guys doing?
Hey, what's happening?
Good, man.
Now that's a Texas welcome, man. I mean, we ain't never got that from a guest.
We're on. Howdy, internet.
Technology,
all right,
man.
So what are we for, guys? Let's get going.
All right, so typically we get started, and we want you to go ahead and tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got started.
All right. Well, oh boy, I am a herpetologist, and I'm a herpetoculturist. I've been working with herpetology and herpetoculture for 25 years now. I've served lots and lots of years working with natural history collections and working in the field a lot. I've been very fortunate to be able to greedily satiate a lot, not all of it, but a lot of my thirst for herpetology over the years. And I've even had the fortune of working in 2 really cool zoos, Fort Worth Zoo and Dallas Zoo. And I've been able to just do a lot of fun things. And has and then just pulling them, it's just been an obsession of mine. And I think that that's one really good ticket for happiness and satisfaction in life, is to have an obsession and rush after that and go after it full throttle. And one thing I got to say is that certainly you guys have got a couple of Texas turtles, but in no way do you have the full force effect of Texas turtles for swamp life because you're missing one man. You're missing a man who is a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force, a man who is a war veteran, and that is our third part of the team, Sal Cibetta. But amazing
I'm gonna have to get
herpetologist
him on
as well. But at any rate, back to me. So one of the things that professionally got me over in the business and anybody wanting to get into doing this stuff, I started out at a herpetology scientific museum collection for herpetology at the University of Texas at Arlington. And they couldn't shake me. I was like a bad cold. And I was just in love with the place. Started out as a work study student. And then while I was doing that, I started working at Fort Worth Zoo and then later on Dallas Zoo. And while I was at Dallas, I started doing some traveling. I was very curious about a lot of the herpetofauna of Central America. So started going and doing my own collecting expeditions for scientific material in Honduras. Later on, working in Mexico, then and Peru. Then I started working full time at the managing the collection at UT Arlington. And wow, what a ride it was. And so I just say go after it, full throttle. And some other things that I've done as well. I was also a herp show promoter here in Fort Worth area. And I put on the very first all captive bred herpetoculture shows here in Texas. I'm happy to say that. I've often felt that one of the things that my line of work's allowed is I've been able to kind of work both sides of the fence within academic herpetology as well as with herpetoculture. And both of them have been very satisfying and rewarding. And they can kind of, well, I would just say, keep your mind open if you're going into this and push and don't give up. And so there you go. That's my feel-good hit of the day.
I do have a small question, and I know the answer to this. But one thing we like to do on our podcast is sometimes we get people who know absolutely nothing about turtles and reptiles that just happen to see it on Facebook. Could you explain to the viewers what the difference between the herpetoculture and the academic side? Like, what do you mean in terms of that for the viewer?
Okay, so there's
Oh, you froze. Let's see. Let me add him back. All right, you're back now.
All right, and we're back. So herpetology is the study of amphibians and reptiles, and whether that means the study of their ecology, natural history, their genetic origins, their evolution, all of that is part of herpetology. Herpetoculture is the maintaining of live amphibians and reptiles for the purposes of breeding or whatever. So that's where the two fields lie. And herpetology can be herpetoculture and vice versa. So it's something that I know lots of people who are working in both sides of the coin with that. And there's capacities for that in zoos today, even at academic institutions. You see one of the things that universities, whenever they conduct research, if they do anything with live animals, then they have to have an IACUC committee, and that's the animal care and use and so forth committee, and they have to approve all the husbandry and so forth. But you certainly do have a lot of neat things that have happened. And one of the things I have to say is there's great stuff that happens on the pure pro level herpetoculture side. And the other thing is that some of those folks that are pushing that have origins that go back to the zoo profession. And if you're wanting to do herpetoculture full time, by all means, go and check out what opportunities are at your local zoo. If you're not able to see a job opening, then you could possibly get a spot as a volunteer. In fact, the curator of reptiles at Dallas Zoo started out as a volunteer in the herp department, chopping up salad and cleaning up mice and crickets. So get your foot in the door however you can. And I mean that in a literal sense, because it wasn't just, you look at the superstar here, but it wasn't always, roses in the beginning. Whenever I tried to get in to find out about starting out, there wasn't the internet back then or anything. When I found out about how to apply for a job at the zoo, I did that at the Fort Worth Zoo. I don't recommend folks back in 1994, and I knocked on an exhibit window for about 5-10 minutes solid until Rick Hudson exploded out of the door, really pissed off, wondering who was banging on the glass. And I asked him about getting a job. Whenever I went to the, I was hired less than a year later after that, by the way. But when I went to the museum at UT Arlington, the woman that was running the collection, the lady there, I walked up to the front door and she slammed it in my face. It just like barely missed hitting me. I went back a week later and she did the same thing. And then I just got angry about it. And all I was wanting to do is ask about what they do there and stuff and how I could be a part of it. So about a third week, I went back, and there was a different person working there, and they were much nicer. Did you? Why? Sweep and mop these floors. So get in however you can and hold on when you do.
No,
Yeah,
it
that's
definitely made sense.
yeah, dude. Honestly, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but it's crazy that you talk about all that stuff because I actually just got hired on right now at the Toledo Zoo. I've graduated almost 10 years ago, and since then I've been volunteering in sanctuaries and everything and down in Florida I can. Met some great people, relationships, and which led me to this open position as we moved, to where, it's part-time now, but then, getting to know people and getting the foot in the door and get to know and putting and through great relationships and connections, I'm hoping to make a great, bright career there, especially more in the reptile vicinity of it. And, it's kind of cool to hear you say it from that end, because that's kind of like almost where my beginning stage is now also, putting so much time, effort, education, everything into it. And, and the thing is, I also would, you could probably vouch for it, is even though I did anything career-wise, full-time or work-wise with it, since, I graduated, it's kind of propelled me to push me to be in my own control of my own destiny, as far as like, if you love something so much and you're passionate about it, you're not going to stop just because you're not, doing something full-time job wise, whether it's this podcast, whether it's you will find a way. And I'm thankful for that. It's made me be able to do this kind of stuff to where, now that the door's open, it just up in a way that I never really would have, meeting a lot of pioneers in the industry.
Did he freeze on you too, Carl?
Pardon?
Did Ed freeze on you, or is it just me?
It just now froze, but I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, it just came back. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, man.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, no, I was just kind of piggybacking on that, man. So it's kind of cool that I went full circle on that now.
Well, have fun with it. That's the thing. Make sure you have fun and get ready for people to really get on your nerves. Unlike anything else, you just got to have fun. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
And you can't let all the other stuff just eat you up. So yeah, it was. I learned all that the hard way too. And when I started out in zoo, young guy in my 20s, and so were all these other fellas that were in the department, and so you had a lot of testosterone, and you had a lot of attitude towards one another, and then you just kind of it was crazy. There's some guys from the business that we were sworn enemies, and we got over it. But looking back, I realized how dumb and pointless a lot of that was, and so that's why I tell you, have fun with it, and use that as a metric for while you're doing it. So, but yeah, so other stuff doing.
Did you keep a private collection when you were starting that? Did you have a private collection, all that stuff going on before you started doing the zoo?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Let me see. I can't hear you guys now. Okay, now there you go.
Something I was curious about, Carl, before we jump into some meat is, how did you get from Carl, I was born, to 20-year-old Carl working at a zoo? How did you decide herpetology was the direction you wanted to go? Was there an experience, or how did you get that love for
it? Yeah. These animals made me really happy when I was a boy. And things were different when I was a kid. I could go outside in my yard. I could find horned lizards. I'd have box turtles sometimes walk into the yard, hognose snakes, just all kinds of neat things. And that right there, I think, is bio. But I had a video game growing up. So wildlife was a big part of what I got intrigue and fascination with. So it was something as a boy, just every book I could find on the topic, I would get and read. And then every time I had the opportunity to go out to look for these things, it felt like a life accomplishment. So it always just made me happy.
No, it makes sense. I guess I don't want to sound like I'm calling you old here, because that's not what I'm doing. But I guess something I've wondered is how one find out years ago that herpetology was something. You know what I'm saying? Now you can look up.
Dude, you're talking about it.
I'll tell you this. Here's the one attitude I had. I was a huge fan. I still enjoy them, but I was a big fan of the butthole surfers whenever I was early in college. And I thought, man, those guys have bank accounts. And what is their job title? Butthole surfer. Come on, man. Yeah. You could say the name of my occupation without, turning a head for the most part. So I just kind of looked at it and I thought, if those guys can do it, then why can't I?
No. I definitely commend you. I mean,
dude, that is awesome.
We're in a generation now where all you have to do is hit Google and you're like, job that deals with turtles, and you're gonna get 50 listings,
Yeah.
And so I hope I didn't, make you seem old, but I was very curious.
Oh man, let me tell you about old. It's kind of like the old space was red in the park, but it had on this line.
Hey, I'm getting old too, man. When you said you've been working herpetology for 25 years, hey, I just turned 28, man. So getting there.
Right on, man.
I'm gonna be 30 soon. So hey, I'm sorry, Ed. I can't help that you're old.
Yeah, I just turned 30.
Before we started the podcast, Carl, Ed, and I were chatting about the only encounter that Carl and I had prior to this podcast, and it had to do in regards with regulations on people keeping terrapins in Florida. And so we kind of wanted to get back to that topic, and Carl was actually sharing some really important information. For the viewers that didn't know, Florida is currently going through a period where they're not allowing people to wild collect terrapins anymore. They're changing the legislation, which not very many people I know are against that aspect of it. But the fear is that it will prevent Floridians from being able to keep any terrapins, because now you're expecting, wildlife officers to differentiate between wild animals and captive bred animals and things of that nature,
subspecies and all that stuff,
subspecies and things of that nature. And so Carl had asked me the question, well, why do Floridians need to keep them? And so that's kind of what we were talking about, Carl. And could you kind of expound upon your thought process and your reasoning?
Yeah, sometimes, you know, I know it might seem like a sucker punch out of nowhere, but, you know, I just kind of, in my background, a lot of times just a straight shoot can kind of get to the meat of the topic. And when you speak, is a very valid concern and throughout its range, like Diamondback terrapins do, then I think it's a valid question. Why do they need to keep it? And I think that some may need to keep them, but as far as regulations, you know, for example, I can't go down and give you a history of poaching events that have happened in Florida. I'm certainly have.
Right.
I can't go down that line right now without doing some research. But a lot of things with the turtle trade was regards to taking from the wild, that just has to stop. These are animals that, from the wild perspective, you cannot manage like you do white-tailed deer. And a lot of states are starting to follow that trend. So with regards to the possession of some of these animals, you have to, I think it is fair to ask, why do they need to keep them? Is it because one of the things that can happen with some species is that a demand is generated. You could have someone who is not of, you know, the most highest scruple level, and you know, more of a plundering type of attitude that takes advantage of a loophole and makes a commercial endeavor. And you know, it can have implications. However, I really feel confident that if anybody in Florida deep-seated concern for Diamondback terrapins and is capable and interested in keeping them, then just being involved with the species is the way to go about doing that. And that in itself would provide more rewarding aspect of it. The people who are wildlife that's in need of placement, it's high. And one example of that is, and I'm not digressing away from terrapins entirely here, and we can go back to that. But an example of that is the reason why we wrote the box turtle book that was published by Eco back in 2009. It was never a battle cry for any type of commercial trade in box turtles. The thought behind it is that with the way box turtles often become displaced, that there's a need for information for care of these animals. And I think you can make the same relation to Diamondback terrapins. For anyone that wants to go onto a argument or a cause for the overall broad scale commercialization of them, then you have to look at the economics behind it and the history. And this is a species that is early 1900s, the United States government put lots of money into trying to get a terrapin program started. And I believe it was around 2005, 2006, but Kim Jong-un in North Korea, they tried to have in North Korea a Diamondback terrapin breeding program so they could produce them for food, and that flopped. One of the things that I heard is that the people that were running the program were so poor and hungry that they were also eating the turtle food, and that could have been one of the reasons why they didn't have much success. But I think beyond that, you know, you're looking at a species that it'll reproduce, but the idea behind commercialization of turtles has to advance. There are people in Florida who are excellent turtle keepers and breeders, and I've had the pleasure of visiting some really, really fine, outstanding collections and facilities. I think that folks that are holding that end of the line of the market in Florida are worthy spokespeople of ownership. However, I don't think that terrapins need to be commercialized. One of the things that you have to consider too is if you have, let's use a example that's ongoing right now with another species. Here in Texas, alligator snapping turtles, as are in Florida and other places, they're protected. In our neighboring state, Louisiana, we have a situation where they are not. In Louisiana, if you're a citizen, you can take one every day. That's the limit. Only one a day, guys. So
There's
what has happened is
5 days in a year.
yeah, and what's happened is that has become a laundering state for poaching activity on a very, very high significant levels. So that's something else that all of the states, I think, need to be united in turtles, and that can give a more of a positive outlook. And the other thing is that, for years and years, I really wanted to tell people about places to go look for turtles and where to enjoy them. And it hasn't been until more recent that we've been a lot more comfortable with sharing a lot of the information that we get to do through Texas Turtles on the social media, even the website, simply because the commercial trade in our native turtles here has been stopped. You own turtles in Texas. If, for example, if you wanted to own a Diamondback terrapin, then an education permit would be needed. But to give you guys an example, about 10 years ago, I was given a few Diamondback terrapins by a local game warden. And he contacted me, and it was someone who was at a mall selling baby turtles at a kiosk. And so that was how I wound up with some. And just being out there on the visible radar, and you're going to be picked up if you're someone that's wanting to work with various species and legally keep them. So I would say just stay involved. And my concern with some of the, well, I don't really have a concern too much about it, so I'll backtrack that. But with regards to hobby and everything, I'll give you guys something. Before I got into herpetology with
Oh, you froze again, Carl.
bred turtles and other. Oh, okay, am I back?
You're back.
We're good. All right.
Yeah.
So before I got into academic herpetology, I was active with herpetoculture. I promoted shows, all captive bred, and we had a lot of cool legendary people attend those. And it was legal at the time to sell captive bred turtles in Texas. And I had a couple of years where I produced over 150 three-toed box turtles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whenever I made a transition into academic herpetology, I did away with all of that the previous activity. I did not want anyone to confuse my motives with the desire to continue working with various species of reptiles and amphibians. I didn't want anybody to be suspicious of anything or even second guess it. So, and that's a real factor, because I've been in Latin American countries where some of the questions that have been asked at permit offices are, why do you really want these things? And in one instance, they were familiar with kingsnake.com. And so that's out there. But I have no problem at all with not being able to sell box turtles. In fact, and it could be a substantial amount of money at one pop. But what I do now is I give away three-toed box turtles. So pretty much all of the three-toed box turtles that I produce here at my home, I've got about 75 adults. And these are animals that have come from a vast, big, huge amount of it. I'd say about 90% of them have come from rescue type situations. And a lot of those are little old people who can no longer care for their turtle colony. And what we've been able to do with that is actually there's a study that started up about a couple of years ago here in North Texas, where they are looking at soft release of three-toe box turtles back to the wild to try to see if they can reestablish them in good native habitat. So there's all kinds of ways. If you're oriented towards herpetoculture, and there's places for that within conservation. If you're herpetologically, all kinds of stuff. So do it all. And so that's why I think asking the question, why do Floridians need to own diamondback terrapins, is a very valid one.
I did want to share this comment. We did have a comment, and I think I'll share it. It'll come up on the screen for you guys to read. But it's if we don't continue captive breeding and keeping of these animals, the increase of demand on wild terrapins will only increase greatly, and their wild populations will suffer. What's your opinion on that?
Okay, so once again, just go back and look at the poaching. Look at the facts. Look at the history of what's happened. And I'll tell you an example that happened here back in 2006. And there was a local business that's been shut down. It was called U.S. Global Exotics. And back then there was a loophole time in, I believe, in Maryland. And these guys had gotten in probably at least a couple hundred wild caught terrapins from Maryland. And so I've seen that in the trade. And these were animals that had full-size adults, barnacles on their shells. And what I would do is whenever I would go to that shop, I would look for dead herps. And that's how I was able to get museum specimens of terrapins. So that type of trade right there, you know, some people might say you need to trade to have genetic stock. No, you don't. You don't need any. If you go, what I've done, mind you, like when I did the work in Central America, there wasn't any type of academic structure. I wasn't affiliated with a university, except I had a place to put specimens. And I've done stuff where I went to Mexico and I legally Mexican mole lizards. And that was with permits in those countries. So I just don't see it as that big of a hurdle. And if people are wanting to keep the genetics of these turtles, then keep them in the wild. Plain and simple. Keep as many of them in the wild as possible. Make them common there. A lot of the folks that are the bad guys are United States citizens that'll go, and even whenever there weren't regulations per se about people having their little pet terrapins, you still had criminals that were going out there and stealing these turtles. I'm very close friends with a Florida state biologist, herpetologist, and he does lots of terrapin work. And the biggest concern that they have there is the stealing of these terrapins. And as far as the herpetoculture of them, when I was in Jakarta, I went to a reptile market, and there were lots of diamondback terrapins for sale there. Lots and lots of them. So a lot of the demand with a lot of the smuggled animals are still going to Asia. The reality is that in China, there's more than 14,000 registered turtle farms. You have turtling on a global scale that people in this side of the world don't get to see. And you can find hundreds or maybe even 1,000 baby diamondback terrapins that are captive bred for sale in Indonesia in little pet stores. So there are places that are breeding them. But we do not need to contribute to the cost of our own animals. We have to, it's a tough thing, man. See, working with turtles, guys, and working with any of these animals is that you have to win every single day. You can't afford to have a slump or whatever. Otherwise, something bad is likely to happen. So, us being able to protect our turtles here in Texas from the trade we don't eliminate. We have a handful of species that are protected where, like I said, you need the necessary permits to have them. But I don't see it as any problem to any real nerd worth his or her salt to get the legal permit or the state license or whatever to own something that they have. If they have that much of a burning desire, that's easy. I had a burning desire that took 28 years to satisfy, and it took 10 years of working in Mexico and making the right connections, and then further stuff with permits, and then running across an airport tarmac. And so, yeah, that was tough. Working with state regulations ain't so bad. The other thing is that states usually really appreciate lots of input and cooperation with their fellow nerds. So if you everything, one of the things that can, well, obviously we're all in a state, one or another, but get active out there. Meet your state herpetologist and let those people know your interest in everything. And that's a really good way in right there. And, you know, there's so many things also that can illuminate the view of why things need to be kept, especially with the more that you interact with other folks. And I just want to encourage anybody out there to, if you like turtles, get involved. Join the Turtle Survival Alliance. That's a great group right there. And you know what? With the Turtle Survival Alliance, they deal with lots of confiscation, wanting to, put their herpetoculture skills to use. They have, in the years past, had some really amazing adoption lists. I had to turn down 12 fly river turtles one time. So, I mean, because how's it going to keep 12 adult fly river turtles? But so that's what I'm saying, and it doesn't have to be a panic or anything. Right. If you take it more of, I think that if folks took it more of a combative call of duty for their state's wildlife, then that makes more sense. Here's a little story for y'all. Long time ago, I was doing market recapture surveys of turtles way out in Southwest Texas. And there was a spot in the river where everybody come out there in the evenings and sit in the water jar and have patience and fun. And somebody out there said, "Hey, what you doing?" And I told him, I said, "Hey, man, I'm doing this market recapture survey on turtles." "Why are you doing that? How you doing that?" And I told him. And one of the guys in the crowd goes, "Hey, we just saw 275 swim past us. We caught it and it had 275 marked on it." And they said, "Why are you doing it?" And I said, "Well, we're getting information because right now, recently there was this old boy that was shipping out 2,500 to 5,000 pounds of live turtle every week from DFW airport to Asia. And so we're getting the science behind the populations and stuff." And they thought that was great. But whenever I added this, we don't need no boy out there in China stealing our Texas turtles. Man, people, it was beers going in the air. It was like a scene of a Braveheart, And so I've seen how turtles can bring people together. And so that's all a lot of my background, Cody, on the question, why do Floridians need it? I thought about that. I was at a spot where they shut down that an awful importer dealer that used to be in Arlington, and I was standing there, and there was a crate with hundreds of green iguanas, and most of them had died. They were all destined for Cairo, Egypt. And I thought, why? Who stirred that pot and said, "Hey, guys in Egypt, we all need green iguanas," So that, asking why do you got to do it is sometimes a good question to ask.
No,
did I answer your question?
No, you definitely did. The person who asked the initial question or made the comment had a couple points to share, which has kind of been my thought. And again, I'm no scientist and I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm just going on based on what I do know. And so he said, it's up on the screen, that it's different. He was mainly talking about a supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was the second point he saying, you know, comparing it to just like drugs, making something illegal only creates a black market instead of regulating it legally.
Well, to that, one could say that more people like drugs than turtles, so it's not a fair example. You know, and so I don't buy it. I don't buy it. You know, if you're well, here's a shoot back if doing this. What's your market info? You know, what's the number of people out there? You got to have an idea if you're wanting to start a business. What do you think? What do you project is right now the number of people out there that are demanding a Diamondback terrapin? I think it's pretty low. You know, and here's the thing too. Who is it? Herp nerds? You know, if it's herp nerds, so that doesn't mean it's got to be your neighbor. And
right.
So, you know, it's a fair market exchange question there.
I think one aspect in terms of the supply and demand, I think is it's interesting to me that the different subspecies cost different prices. And so I guess obviously there's some that are more rare than others. And, you know, there's people that are willing to spend outrageous amounts for, you know, different phenotypes and things of that nature. But something to me, I still find northern diamondback terrapins beautiful, whereas there's some people that are like, a northern diamondback terrapin, that's a $40 turtle. Whereas they're like, I want a spotless albino ornate that's a $28,000 turtle to them. And I think you make a valid point. Like, what is your market? Are you selling to thousands of people? Or are you selling 8 turtles a year? And, you know, that's your business, you know? So I definitely think you make a valid point, but I also do agree. I've had a number of buyers from other countries, I'll just say that, you know, across the Pacific Ocean, who have offered $3,000 for a turtle that I paid $200 for, let's just say. And I think, like you said, you have to find people that aren't willing to take that little bit of money to send that animal somewhere where it doesn't belong. You know, you have to appreciate your native wildlife, you know?
Yeah. That's I stand by that. That's you know, and the other thing is that your friends across the Pacific can get terrapins.
Yeah.
They're already there. And
they just don't want to pay their price for them.
Well, there could be, you know, one of the things that I've heard is that among 14,000, and a lot of them breed soft shell turtles for direct consumption. But, you know, a lot of these people are probably wanting fresh turtles into their breeding programs as well. And things as, you know, that's one way of looking at it. But I'll tell you this, you know, it's something that actually make a successful business out of selling turtles. And they didn't bank it on just one species. So that's one thing to consider right there. And so once again, if you're involved, if you establish yourself as somebody that's credible with keeping turtles and successfully, then there's lots of avenues for you to be able to own a Diamondback terrapin. That doesn't involve the commerce. So
now going back to
and I don't know about any of the other regulations regarding. I'm not all that familiar on what's totally allowed or unallowed with native Florida wildlife, but you know, guys, here in Texas, man, we had, and I don't know if you guys have the numbers. You probably do. You could probably find out. But whenever in Texas, we stopped all the except for 4 species back in 2007. 11 years later, we included those 4 species right there. And like I said, it was because we had primarily one individual who was selling 2,500 to 5,000 pounds of live turtle every week, and that was going on for 2 or 3 years. And that was direct out of our system. And so you think about it from the law enforcement perspective as well. It makes it a lot easier for those law enforcement agents to do their job. And you can't expect all these guys to know every single difference between each subspecies or captive bred or whatnot. And that goes back to something I mentioned earlier with being involved, because an idea that I had with box turtles, I didn't pursue it, but an idea I had was to try to be completely open with the state, create a pedigree of animals, and have those registered. Create something like that, to where not only if you have captive bred species A or species B, then anybody that buys it's going to know that you have quality animals that are being sold. So that right there is it might be a pipe dream type of thing, but I really like what you got. And like I said, we wouldn't be able to tell people about places to go or share counties where we find a lot of these animals. And I think that a lot of the conservation rests upon people knowing that their native wildlife has a future. That even though you can't stop. I mean, there's a law against murder. People get killed every day. But you have to be at least take comfort in that there's a law or regulation against that. So you don't want to, and having doing well is something that is really, really rewarding. There is so much to gain, so much insight to learn about these animals with regards to being able to. And sharing that on social media, we've gotten so much of a positive response with lots and lots of new insights, new localities, and you can, and so you're much more effective. And if you're wanting to be somebody that can help conserve something, then the more people that know what side of the bread you put your butter, then the quicker that becomes. So I've had people ask for animals, that not many, but I have had folks, and I just kind of ghost them, man. I don't even worry about that.
One thing, we have talked a lot about terrapins, but can you kind of explain to the followers what you guys do with Texas turtles and how you guys kind of got started and whatnot?
Yeah, it started back in 2007. I was at the meeting at Texas Parks and Wildlife whenever they ended the commercial trade in just about all of the turtles. And something that came up was that law enforcement had a really difficult time. They would get a box, a big crate with thousands of turtles in it. And for people that aren't all that fully familiar with turtles, noticing if you have one of the reddish older male cooters, or maybe mature map turtles, or melanistic red-eared sliders or whatnot, or differentiating between what species of soft shell or whatever it could be, that's time consuming. And these agents have a lot of work on their hands already. So I created that because, one, I as well, and that's also a group got started. I wanted to know what people in Texas were seeing with these animals as well. And so with Texas Turtles, a website, I started getting lots of emails to answer people's identification questions. And that began in 2007. And just, last year, we went ahead and got nonprofit status for the group. And it's myself and Viviana Ricardes and South Cibeta. And we conduct lots and lots of statewide surveys. We either do that by trapping surveys, or we go out and conduct visual surveys. With regards to terrapins, we've just been let in on a privilege to be able to make some visits to some really cool sounding study sites along the Texas coast. And we do have a couple of spots where we go out and watch terrapins in Texas. We haven't yet started anything active. We hope COVID knocked a lot of our plans out. But one of the things that we wanted to do is some of the communities on the coast, they have ghost trap removal programs where they go out and they get these old crab traps that are left out there and stuff, and they catch and kill, unfortunately, a lot of turtles. We have in our permit to where we can salvage all of the species of turtles in Texas except for the sea turtles. That's something. Voucher specimens, terrapins from Texas are very, very rare in museums. And so there's very little scientific material there available. And by scientific material, you'd want to have as good of a specimen as possible, but you also want to have as precise locality data. And terrapins are not a species that we want to go and sacrifice just for the sake of having in a museum collection. That was the other ghost trap cleanup to find out more about our terrapins was something we had planned for this year, but it unfortunately got knocked out. I don't know. Did I go off the question?
What do you notice the difference between your What do you notice about your locality specific to the Texan? You know, the whole Texan Diamondback and Mississippi, the whole kind of locality thing that people are still kind of teeter-tottering on.
Well, I think a lot of that, if anyone's teeter-tottering on any specifics between what, makes the break with subspecies or species of whatever animal, then genetics is going to be the ultimate thing. It's going to provide a quick response. And, you could sit there and do lots and lots and lots of detailed physical examinations of animals. And there are certainly people that are very good at that with terrapins, being able to identify right off the bat any subspecies. But the truth is that genetics can be used as that lightsaber to just cut through the BS. And a lot of times the genetics does wind up supporting things that make total sense, where you have species. Like take, for example, the alligator snapping turtles. Whenever the new species was described, it included that it had it to where there were 3. And then after careful review, and then I think some genetic reexamination, it was down to 2. And you can do that with terrapins, but definitely their habitat is already been compromised by lots and lots of alteration. And I don't know how much of the commercial trade hit Texas. You see, there's a lot of commercial trade that happened in turtles in the United States. Knowledge of it or something. We all heard about turtles being eaten and everything. But for example, another protected species in Texas, the Texas tortoise, was actually not only commercially collected for pets all throughout, pretty much the early 20th century on into the 70s or early 70s when they became protected. But they were also taken to be made for skin cream. And I mean, we're talking, lots and lots and lots of stuff going on with that. But anyway, I think I jumped off the topic. Sorry.
That's good stuff. Those are interesting. Those are things that you can't just Google.
I know where I was going with it. So with terrapins, we don't know if anything like that had ever happened here in Texas. I don't know the extent of terrapin consumption here. I do think it was the Texas terrapin to hybridize with the northern, because the Texas terrapin has a larger size and the northern has a better flavor. And so they were hoping to get this bigger hybrid turtle. But at any rate, I have no idea what the past trade in Texas was with them. And
that makes a lot of sense, though.
I'm glad it's halted,
That's interesting. Never would have thought about that. Yeah.
The only way that I knew that I found out about the tortoises in Texas being used for skin cream, and the retired actress that had a beauty company doing that. I think her name was Polly Bergman, but she was, I think it was around Laredo, Texas, or something. But I found that out from my old friend Tim Jones, and he's over 80 years old. and it was just in a conversation. I'd never read that in any book or anything. So yeah, there's no telling what other stuff we've missed out on learning about. But the Texas stuff is definitely patchy.
I do want to share this real quick. We were talking about the turtle farming, and Jordan brings up a valid point. I've definitely heard of many terrapin turtle farms in Louisiana.
That you haven't heard of terrapin farms in Louisiana, or you have?
I have.
That you have? Oh, okay. All right. How many?
My understanding is the ones I've heard of have initially began because there's no regulation on how many you can keep or take of them. I had heard a story, and this is secondhand, of somebody who set up ponds for the purpose of them mass producing, for the purpose of him being able to export them, and get CITES essentially. And that was a person who, from what I was told, was in Louisiana. So,
well, I don't know what is their CITES status? Are they CITES 2, or are they on CITES at all?
They're on CITES. I'd have to look up the exact. I don't have it or know off the top of my head.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that that type of thing right there. I don't know the person, and so if I,
it's not and just farm. It was like you said. It was years ago, essentially for turtle soup. From what I was told, is like you said, they figured out the northerns taste better. And, the Gulf Coast ones are larger. So if I can put the taste and the size, more bang for my buck, essentially. Unfortunately.
Well,
I got a question. So going back to the thing that you were talking about, when you...
Oh,
was that?
CITES 2. We got the answer. CITES 2.
CITES 2. Okay. So if it's CITES 2, if I remember correctly, CITES 2 limits the number of export to be around, I think it's like something like 20 or 25,000 individuals a year. And, I'm supposed to believe there's some guy out there cranking out that many captive bred terrapins a year. And you gotta be critical. And so just using the example as it was given to me, I got a guy with no name. Seems kind of, but that doesn't mean just because are you guys there?
Yeah, you were breaking up. Sorry. You're back.
Breaking up.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think we were all breaking up there for a minute. Okay, good. So the thing I was saying is like, just thinking about the example I was given, some dude with no name, and kind of somewhere vague, really. But because who's the competition? Why the need for any secrecy? I don't know who the competition would be for someone like that. See, in China, I haven't been. Folks I know that have visited turtle farms out there. The thing is that these guys are really super competitive amongst each other. So that's why I'm wondering, like, if you got one person in the United States able to do that, good grief, man. Why not try to turn that into something that would make more money in the long run instead of having to worrying about always having a good year breeding terrapins? There's lots of ways that folks have been, well, I'll tell you this, alligator snapping turtles. And there's 2 federal facilities that are breeding them and having a lot of good luck. I could see something where if there was somebody capable of breeding those terrapins, working with the states and soaking up that grant money, man, and go out there and get them big juicy vecas. That's grant in Espanol, and have you some money and get you all this good positive PR and stuff. That'd be To me, that's kind of a no-brainer right there. And you know, if you're able to work something out like that, then so much the better. I couldn't deal with the stress. I like knowing, you know, when my money's going to show up and stuff. And I wouldn't want to deal with the stress of all that. That's a lot of adventure. Too much adventure for me.
No, I definitely agree. Ed, I'm curious what your question was before you broke up, or
I don't even remember.
Yeah, I was talking when you were talking about the, you know, three-toed box turtles and actually relocating them, you know, what the ones that you bred. And I know they talked about that down in Florida with the terrapins. And, you know, I know FWC was big on, you know, you can't just release, you know, the captive bred in, you know, to wild stock.
Right.
I was wondering your take on that, and, you know, from
Well,
a dividend
if you
is
do
with
it,
that, where you can make it healthy, sustained pedigree of animal to introduce.
well, what we've had to do with the animals that were going to that program, they all had to get cleared and certified by a veterinarian, and the state of Texas had to be notified of it as well. And so you cover all your bases. And what a soft release is to where you take that turtle and you raise it in the habitat in which it's going to be released. And that way they become familiar with that location. And the idea is that, well, what's been shown to work, and a lot of it has, is that you have a much higher success in rewilding by right there. And this study is being followed up. There is a student who's been working with that, and she's been doing radio telemetry of other turtles at that location. We've had some landowners here in Texas very interested in doing it with adult box turtles, trying the technique out on large private acreages in very nice habitat here in Texas, to where the turtles could be followed. And following the turtles is exactly where we've run into the headache, because the challenge we get to is that you want to find out the success rate of this. And so getting enough people to actively volunteer or work on learning that is often the big challenge. Right now, this whole COVID thing screwed up a lot of stuff. But I don't know how they would do any type of soft release of terrapins back into the wild. I think it could be done, but I'm not familiar with what type of methodology that could be done with. And so I think it's crucial that everybody stays in communication. The wildlife agents, they are very keen of what goes on online. You know, we get asked for our input on a number of instances of things, and it's been really rewarding like that. For example, here's something for you guys. Rio Grande cooters, Pseudomys gorzugi. There was a petition filed against the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service by the Center for Biological Diversity, and a lawsuit pushed their way as well, because they want to have Rio Grande cooters listed as federally endangered. And I personally, I don't share the opinion that they should be. And we've been able to provide real data from our findings and field research regarding the population of Rio Grande cooters in Texas. I don't think that I don't think that the complete banning and so forth, or let me backtrack. I don't think that federal listing is the cure that's needed for it. I think in Texas we have a good way of protecting our wildlife right now with the laws that we have. Under the law, if someone is wanting to go out and get their own Rio Grande cooters, I believe they can have. I don't have a non-game hunting license, but I think the number was 6 per person, and or per person per year or whatever. But that's why I think about the demand, supply and demand, because there's an opportunity right there for someone to go and legally get a small number of these animals if they're so interested in them. But you don't really see But we've been able to provide information regarding that, and we've been able to also provide data for other species in Texas as well. And right now, alligator snapping turtles, we've been doing a lot with those. I think that we have to get as many kids turned on to them and at least excited. And for my take, I don't care to push the ownership agenda with alligator snapping turtles as a thing to promote the future generation liking them. I think that if people, I think that a lot more nerds from my day would have felt comfortable sharing their love and appreciation of these animals if they knew that there was some type of protection afforded to them. And so that's how I look at it. And we're happy to do stuff and participate on social media, television, however we can, to get people excited about these things. Guys, we, you know, I don't know if any of us are going to make it to live to be 100. And there's a lot of fun to be had with these things. And there's a lot less of them than there are us. So embracing turtles that way, I think, is a much clearer path. There will always be a need for turtles to have a home, for displaced turtles to be taken care of, and for their husbandry to be pushed. It doesn't have to have a commercial agenda. You know, hey, if you're in herpetology or herpetoculture, welcome to poverty and fun. There you go.
When people find out how much I spend on properly taking care of turtles, it's like $300 for a filter and this and that, and oh my God, I would never. And I'm like, but you do it for your dog, so what's the difference? Like, you have outfits for your dog.
Yeah, but you guys are weirdos.
Yeah,
you're weirdos, you know.
Dude, yeah,
other
dude,
people
like,
like that. But so that's the other thing is that we're not like other folks. We're able to, you know, it doesn't bug us as much doing that. And
yeah, staying on the mountaintop, man, because for the past week, setting up all my stuff up here in a whole different family oriented, they're coming in like, what is this? We ain't never seen anything like this. I'm like, welcome.
You don't get no break. You go to work and you'll do it, and then you'll come home tired from work. You'll have that young'un over there doing that. You have an old lady over there doing that. You have a dog doing that, and you just want to do that.
Come on,
you brought
preaching
it, yourself,
bro. Preaching it, man.
I'm
Dude,
curious.
We're the ones that'll be out there at 10 midnight. Don't matter as long as they're taken care of. You'll jump up in the middle of the night. Did I forget to turn a light off, or you know, or something like that?
Bro.
Do what?
Middle of a hurricane storm. I've been up 3 a.m. and I'm like, oh God, I hope the drain isn't over flooding in my setup outside. And my wife will wake up and I'm outside in her pond, you know, with a raincoat on, digging out turtles, making sure it's not flooded. And she's like, what are you doing? You're going to get sick. And I'm like, I'd rather get sick than my turtles be swimming in the backyard somewhere.
Yeah, so that goes back to that question. Who is it that wants these turtles?
Right.
What's wrong with you people? Why would you want to spread that infection?
One way that I like to tell people is if you're also not willing to take a turtle to the vet, you probably don't need one, because at the end of the day, they're medical professionals, you know, and some things we just can't treat as regular hobbyists, but everybody's not willing to do that. Oop, am I going out?
It's
yeah, definitely.
Oh, my bad. I don't know what you caught it. I was going out.
I heard you.
Okay. I did want to share a couple of things that I was curious about while we were talking. You said you used to have a collection and now you have a whole bunch of three-toed box turtles.
Oh, wait. So I know what I said. I think we broke up. What I said is that I've always maintained the collection. The collection that I've had in the past was around 100 species. And so I did lots and lots of, and you know, working in the zoo field, working in herpetology, there was just so many opportunities for surplus animals to come in. And we had, gosh, man, it's just been like, I could fill a zoo section with what I used to maintain at home. And when I was younger and I worked at full-time at a zoo, and I came home and I was just that hardcore, and I took care of it. Later on, the collection started to get a lot of very distinguished orphaned animals. At one point, there were 26 species of viper from about 7 or 8 different countries. There was always a very, very strong presence of turtles, lots and lots of day geckos. But later on, I started to look at what I was doing. And for a while, for many years, a couple of decades, having a very diverse postage stamp collection, I got some gratification of it. And then it just dawned on me, the amount of work and constant work for years. And why was I doing it? What is the point of this? So I started to get away from all that, and I focused, because I still enjoy maintaining reptiles. I don't know if I'll ever stop doing that, but I shifted, and I wanted to do things that I felt I had more of a purpose with. And so turtle conservation was a priority. And I wound up receiving, gosh, over the past decades, lots of animals that needed homes through TSA, Turtle Survival Alliance adoptions, as well as a number of zoos. And so you can't really get much better animals to work with and things like that. There have been rescues along the ways that, you know, folks have needed help and stuff. But that, and I've got a few snakes here that I've had for a long time that I'm fond of. But I've also got some Mexican mole lizards. And working with herpetology got me to Venezuela. And when I went to Venezuela, my friend Hilson Rivas gifted me the first trip I did. I came back with everything we collected, preserved, and we also came back with a live female Zulia toadhead turtle. At that point, that was the only living one in the United States. And so the following year, I brought back, no, it's the second one in the United States. A turtle keeper up in New York had one. And the second year I came back and I brought back 2 from Venezuela alive. And we had the permits and so forth. But I kept the other. And I've bred them twice now. And this species, there's so much we need to learn about this animal in the wild. Unfortunately, right now, Venezuela is in a very, very dire situation where it wouldn't be possible to do much in the way of productive field work there. However, with this turtle, being able to take time and learn about the life history and herpetoculture of it, one, as it can have an incredibly long incubation time. The first clutch of eggs, it took about 301 days before they hatched. The second time I got a clutch,
wow,
it took about 280 days for them to hatch. And that was with just kind of working, trying to figure out some of the diapause with the incubation requirements. Then what really, the other stuff that happened, there was interesting courtship, interesting breeding behavior. Years later, I put a brother-sister who used to live together when they were really small, and I put them together, and I wanted to see what they would do. They were both sub-adults, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if there was going to be aggression. I didn't know if there was going to be sexual interest. I had no idea. And instead, there was an elaborate breeding procedure that these turtles did. And this is all material that I have to finish writing up to publish. But these turtles went up, brother, sister, hadn't seen each other in a few years. And they come up and they put their noses together. One places its hand out. The other does this while they're facing. And they wafted the water to that hand, and then they switched over and did the other. And every time they did it, their hands got ever so closer. And this behavior went on for an hour. And that was a moment right there that I felt really lucky to be able to witness. And I've seen it a couple other times after reintroducing them. So there's a lot of stuff with these animals that we can learn from. And that's why I think it's more important to do that. Ownership is something that's temporary. But learning this stuff and everything is liable to stick with you a lot longer.
Yeah,
No,
that's good, man.
I got a beer run story for you. So Venezuela, yikes! Here's something off topic. It was hot. We were in Puerto Ayacucho, and noted Floridian and herpetologist Coleman Sheehy III, and I were with Tito Barros and Hilson Rivas and Axel Kellerman, and we were in Puerto Ayacucho, Venezuela, and we had been collecting scientific specimens. And at the end of the day, the guys wanted some beer. So I went to the store, and I went in there to buy the beer, and the guy said, sorry, I can't sell you beer. I said, why not? And he goes, well, it's against the law. I said, well, I bought beer here yesterday. Yeah, it's against the law today. And guys, the thing is that the president of the country in Venezuela was changing the laws every single day. And it was a nutso thing. And so the man told me, he said, go outside and wait against the wall. And I thought, maybe my Spanish ain't working so good. I asked him again. He said, just go outside, wait against the wall, just go do it. And I did. And I hear this, and a cinder block comes out of the wall. And the guy said, you wanted 12? Yeah. So he started handing me the beer through the hole in the wall. I gave him my money through the hole in the wall. That's because the law that changed that day is that no beer could leave the threshold of a building. So that man made a hole in the wall to sell beer. I'll tell you this, yeah, I could probably do a podcast.
Talking about loopholes
on Herp Trip.
Loopholes, right?
There you go, man. I might be able to fill a podcast on Herp Trip beer run stories, but but that was there you go. And
we're looking forward to that.
Golly, man, you guys got me wanting to tell another story, but I don't know if your viewers would care about it or be interested.
Well, this is prime real estate, man. Okay. I think people are almost enlightened to hear this stuff, man. You can't get more than real like that.
Let's see. It was kind of dark. So one is more lighthearted. I was in Tamaulipas, Mexico, and we were collecting specimens there, and I was with some herpetologists from the university in Mexico City, as well as a biologist that works for BioClone. They made antivenin. And so we were also collecting venom for some of that work. And we were bored, and we got our room at this hotel, and we went to go look and see if there was any place where we could get a beer. And there was a bar. So we walk in, and the three of us sit down, and man came up and said, what do you guys want? Told him. And while he goes to get our beer, there's two couples sitting at an adjacent table on a double date. And the two guys start having an argument. And then one guy jumps up out of his seat. The other guy jumps up out of his seat. And both of their girlfriends are like trying to get them to settle down. That guy said something to him, and he just swings with his haymaker. And he totally misses the guy in front of him, and he swings around and socks his girlfriend out cold. And they threw us out of the bar.
They threw you guys out of the bar?
Yeah. They said, y'all need to leave. But I'm thirsty. I don't care, boy. Get out of here.
Say you.
I'm curious.
Say you brought that stuff in here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious about something now. You mentioned the different variety of animals you've kept and whatnot. What has been your favorite species of turtle that you've kept?
Oh, man. I don't know. I've had fun, and there's been some that have been really interesting. Fly river turtles are interesting and fun, and I never would have had the. It would have been a very very unlikely scenario for me to be keeping those uh, had I not been actively involved. Uh, but that's the thing is I can't tell you one. Right now, I maintain about 28 species of turtles and tortoises, and uh, I get a lot of satisfaction from what I'm able to do with that. So
No, I
Now,
feel like
question: when
oh,
even when you had all that, when you had that big collection, and even when you have it now, what is because what was the magnitude of how you kept them? Troughs, how was the setups like to maintain that big of a
well, it was aquariums, and then for a lot of the snakes, especially the venomous species, it was uh, either neotiche cages or the big giant cages you see in the back areas of zoos, similar to that. So that was the other thing. And I did have animals that lived a long time, but uh, I've wondered. Well, it's one of those things like I wonder about. Like you got this fat snake that say you have a copperhead for 35 years, and I had one that lived to be 35, and you know I wonder about it. I wonder if it's really happy. But you know what, man? Let me tell you, anybody, and that's a genuine animal welfare thought right there. Uh, and maybe that's something that's wrong with me. I've spent that much time with these things and so some of that tempers my attitude on why do people need them. Uh, you know, I'll be honest with you guys. A vast majority of what I've done has been on keeping animals has been a very just personal, selfish thing, uh, and I try to keep avenues of being able to contribute outside beyond that. But there you go. You guys got dropped on your heads as well when you were little, so.
I think
no,
that's the one biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is getting alligator snapper turtle once the spring hits, and for so using for educational programs and stuff like that. That I love to do with some of the books my book I read and or I wrote, and just for you know different outreaches and school systems because my wife's a school teacher, and nothing will beat that first experience I've ever had.
Well, I did school programs for years, and I used to make really good money doing that too. So that's something you could definitely do. Being at your zoo, you could possibly even try to initiate some programs there in Toledo with regards
Yeah,
to alligator snapping turtles and
yeah.
why these cypress swamps are important. And just maybe if you felt really bold and cool, you could go out and get yourself a Texas Turtles T-shirt and do it. And you don't have to be in
Come on,
Texas to
I
rock
got
that.
you.
You
I
could
got you,
be
man. Come
anywhere.
on. I love news from everyone, man. Come on.
But no, man. Uh, uh, if you want to do that, do it, and don't be a. That's the other thing as well. That might help you out over there at the zoo as well. Somebody that has that strong of an appreciation, wanting to tie it in with
Yeah.
native conservation concerns.
Yeah, there's nothing that beats, the younger generation, when I went up with one of my leopard tortoises and a terrapin and, a mud turtle I brought, when I shared my book for my 18-month-old daughter at their daycare. And these kids went wild. All they cared about was the different size tubs, and it got bigger and bigger. And they never seen animals like that before because that,
I
I mean,
was at a school and I held up a leopard tortoise, and I had a teacher just jump up and scream and run out the door. And her entire class, this was like at an assembly thing, the entire class, and they all just did the same thing. And other teachers just said, and just walked out of the room.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was because the tortoise was on stage and not me, but no, so something
Yeah,
to look this up. I don't know if you guys see it. I
and
had
that's
a televised moment where I had a gecko jump on a news anchor man, and that's all. And that gecko had jumped on a little girl at a presentation a week before, and she was delighted. But it knocked down a guy who was a former All-American football player. And so if anybody hadn't seen it, just go look at. I bet you go on YouTube and look up gecko attacks news anchor. You're liable to see a still very handsome but a little bit younger looking Carl Franklin holding a Texas rat snake or Western rat snake, and then this fella falling over. So check that out. If you like leaf-tailed geckos, there you go.
I'm laughing because it's funny that you're talking about it. And I don't know if you have the Facebook comments up right now, but that's literally what they were talking about. And the comments, everybody's talking about the video. And they're talking about it, the original viral video.
Yeah, that's probably the one good thing. You know, I'm a proud dad and all. That's all fine and everything. But let's be honest, folks. Probably the best thing that I ever contributed to humanity was being a part of that event, and it was all an accident. But yeah, do something make folks feel happy and have some fun. That's great.
Yeah.
No, we definitely appreciate it, Carl. You've definitely been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I'm excited to get to know you, and that our encounter didn't end on why do you need them. I've definitely learned a lot, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to definitely have another episode where just story time, man. Just sit down and get your favorite drink and just let's just hang out.
Turtle story time, man. I'm
all
down.
Right.
I would be down for that.
No, that's
for
good
the
stuff.
viewers that don't know, next week we have Viviana, or First Lady of Texas Turtles, as she's known on Instagram. Carl, I'm gonna have to get with you guys so we can get the trifecta of Texas Turtles on the podcast too. We can't leave him out, man. We gotta show you guys some love.
No. He's real deal. So
no, normally at the end of our podcast, we give our guests a chance to tell people how they can follow you, the work you're doing, and whatnot. And so this is your chance, man. Let people know what you're working on, how they can support, what you guys need.
I know that the viewers of this podcast are a cut above most podcasts. And so it brings me a lot of comfort to tell you that if you'd like to find out more about what we're doing here in Texas with our turtles and the excitement we get from them, then check us out. TexasTurtles.org. Look up Texas Turtles on Facebook. Go ahead and join up with us on Instagram as well. Check us out on Twitter. And come on, y'all. Show it some love and let people know you got good taste in finer clothing. Go to the shop part of our website and YouTube and get your own original Texas Turtles t-shirt. And the proceeds from that go directly to support our ongoing research programs. So there you go.
Hey, I have to admit, man, that was quite the presentation, man. That was.
He's waiting for that moment, man.
Hey, you might belong on TV, man.
He's gonna cook. Look, getting on TV, man. He already went viral, man. This is all for giggles.
Man, that was impressive. I was stunned for a minute, man. I gotta admit.
Dude, it just means we gotta step it up a notch each and every week.
Well, hey, I think you're going to be doing that with the next guest that you guys are going to be bringing on, without a doubt. So from deep in the heart of Texas, everybody, peace out, and y'all have a good night and stuff.
All right, you guys.
You heard it.
Until
That's
next
been
week.
What the?
Oh, I got to get up. Shell Podcast. We will see you
Come
next
on.
week for week 2 of our special. Until then,
Deuce.
enjoy the rest of your week and get ready for Thanksgiving, guys.
Come on now. And we got
Right
them
on.
holiday special episodes coming up, so don't forget that either.
Ow!
All right. Y'all have a good evening.